Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your Chaos to Clarity business mentor and your human design expert. And today I could not be more excited to talk about why your lead generation is not working, because it's a big problem for so many people. Okay, so many people, you're out there, you're doing everything quote unquote right, and it's still crickets. You can't sell anything to save your life, and now you're starting to get worried. You're starting to get frantic. You're starting to lose your shit because, oh my God, why can't I sell a single freaking thing, right? Everybody else is doing it. How come I can't? And I just want to let you know that the issue isn't necessarily the tactic or the way you're doing it, but it probably is a misalignment and not in the way you think, right? It's probably an energetic misalignment. Quite honestly, for a lot of people, you're probably just not working properly within your human design strategy and type, right? So I just start this off. I am a 1/4 manifesting generator. I am meant to do a lot of things. But here's the thing that nobody tells you until you figure it out yourself, right? Or until you see some random post on Instagram and you realize, oh my gosh, but what if I'm actually saying yes to the wrong things? And part of my human design is that I am here to help you understand, oh, what am I saying yes to that's aligned? What am I saying yes to that's not aligned? Right? Because when you figure out those things that are not in alignment, that don't feel great, but you're doing them because, well, I think I should be doing this, you're just going to continue to go in circles. Okay. So first of all, I just want to get into a little bit of why some lead generation might be failing for you, right? Why there's misaligned methods, non-responsiveness, ignoring if you're a sacral strategy like me, your sacral authority like me, why you might be ignoring your sacral. And that is definitely something that I have done. And I don't want to say I continue to do, but I catch myself in, just getting caught in that trap of like, I actually didn't listen to my sacral, but it really did tell me what was right and what was wrong. Anyway, so first of all, there's a lot of gurus out there, and I don't want you to put me on that pedestal of guru. And here's why. I don't want to be set on that pedestal because I'm going to share with you what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and what works and what doesn't work for my clients. So a lot of times, and because social media is great, and two things can exist at once. Social media is great, and it's also not great because we are out here doing things that somebody else said we should do because they said we should do it. And this goes back to in the last episode when I talked about an open head and ajna. We get stuck in other people's words and we start spouting those words out. And social media is great at showing us the things that we're interested in, right? You click once on a cat picture and social media is going to be like, oh, you like cats? Here you go, right? That's how the algorithm works, right? You click on something and social media is like, okay, I'm going to start showing you more things. If you keep clicking if you keep commenting, I'm going to keep showing you more of that thing. So this is where if you have an open head and ajna, you can get stuck in this trap because you start seeing things that other people are doing and you start thinking, oh, I need to do it that way. That's got to be the right way. It's working for that person, right? So here's some things that can be misaligned for some, right? Some common methods, right? So when we think about lead generation, we think about bringing people in and showing people our stuff, getting people interested, right? We've got social media, we've got, website, landing page, lead magnets. We've got webinars, workshops, master classes, there's email marketing, there's blogging, there's testimonials, there's case studies, there's podcasting, there's referral platforms and programs. There's, to go back to the top of social media, there's so many places that people are, right? And it's not just Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, right? There's so many. There's places like Alignable, there's Pinterest, there's I think Clubhouse is still a thing. Did you know that? I did not. Anyway, there's so many, right? There's Blue Sky. There's never been more social media platforms than there are right now, which is great and terrible. And I say terrible because we feel like we have to be everywhere. And a few years ago, that was the case. People would tell you, just put everything on all the platforms and you'll be great. That's not necessarily what you need to do, right? And a lot of times when we think about layered marketing and layering in the things that we need to do, right? It's very popular for people to have a lead magnet, talk about it on social media, and host a masterclass, and then email their list, right? Those are 4 really popular things to do, and they're really great to do. But I just want to say, none of these will work without a strategy. And that is where a lot of coaches, course creators, and thought leaders fall short. Is they're like, okay, I'm just going to put everything everywhere. And pretty soon they're exhausted because they're putting everything everywhere and they still have no money in their account. There's no ROI. They're just working 80 hours a week for nothing, for no reason, right? Or they're talking to people, but they're getting friend zoned or ghosted. And, when you think about ghosting, right? If you're talking to people and you're like, oh, this is going so great. I was just about to ask them to get on a sales call and now they won't answer me, right? So when we think about that, because that is a very common thing to happen. I've had it happen to me a lot. And a lot of times when we get that rejection, it's the end of the world. We're like, that's it. I'm done. Now, I don't want you to think that that is a permission slip to not ever DM anyone again. Because if you are in high ticket sales, right? If you're a coach, a course creator, right? A thought leader who, brings in people and you need them to buy your things, right? Your courses, your one-on-one, coaching, that kind of stuff. You have to build trust. And right now, a lot of people don't have a lot of trust because over the last 5 years, there have been some not so great people out there who have been taking the money and running, right? Who, you haven't gotten the things that you wanted from that, right? So, when you think about how you want this to work, layering your marketing and having a strategy, which is what I teach people to do. I teach you how to figure out your strategy. I teach you how to figure out how to work without feeling overwhelmed. And I teach you how to trust the process of crossing the T's, dotting the I's, right? When I worked in corporate, I worked in the technical documentation and training department. And in that department, we created the trainings for the products that we created, right? So I worked for a big machine making company, a paper converting machine making company. That's a lot of words. But anyway, so I was in the department that my department had to show the customers how to run the machines that the company I worked for, created. We would spend months getting ready for those trainings. Months. And, when I transitioned out of corporate and into full-time entrepreneurship in 2013, I realized there are actually a lot of skills that I learned in corporate that will do me well here and now. And now more than ever, right? I appreciate those skills now more than ever because I know it takes a while to get to where I need to be. So a lot of times the strategy isn't working. And now I tell you that story because you don't have a strategy. You're just posting random things, random posts. You're posting workshops, but you're not doing the market research. Okay. So the thing that helps me from my corporate job was, well, we know this is the laundry list of things that the person who is running this machine is going to have to do, right? Now, how does that translate into online coaching? How does that translate into that? Well, you need to understand your market research, right? You need to understand what is it that your end user, the people you're going to help, what is the outcome that they want? What do they want from you? And what are things that you are an expert in that you can guide them in? So a lot of times it just takes a little bit of market research. And here's where people, they're like, I have to post on social media. You can use your social media posts for market research, and you should. I don't quote unquote should people a lot, but if you're not using your posts on social media for market research to make sure you're in tune and in line with your ideal client, you are missing out, right? You're missing out on so much because people aren't just going to buy based on a link and a click anymore. Long gone are those days. So, I would bet that if I asked you about social media, you would probably tell me I'm only on it because of my business. And that story that you're telling yourself is really probably something like social media probably won't work, but I'm here anyway. Or I'm afraid I'm going to overshare, so I'm not really sharing and I'm just doing vague statuses on Facebook, right? Back in the day, which was a Tuesday, used to call that vague booking, right? Where people would post something like, oh, I need thoughts and prayers right now. I'm not ready to talk about it, which good, great, grand. But then in the comment section, you're like, oh, what are you talking, like, oh, here if you need me, right? Like, don't be afraid to text me. And it's clickbait is what it is. Clickbait. Anyway, so I'm not saying you have to overshare. I'm not saying you have to put 24/7 of your life on Facebook. What I am saying is you need to know what your clients' problems are, what your solution is, and then the bridge is your method to get them there. So what is that? And how can you drop little nuggets of gold to help people get to where they want to go, to see that you are the answer for them? So basically what this is you probably have to implement some boundaries, shift some of your internal stories, and you probably need to understand what is yours. What are your thoughts? What are your inner thinkings versus what have other people implanted in and on you? And most people have an open head and or ajna. So it's super common for people to be like, well, so-and-so told me I should do this, so here I am, right? Now, I want to go through a couple of the different centers because everybody's chart is different. So if you have an open head and or ajna, right? Like I said in the previous episode, it's super easy to pick up other people's stories and let them live rent-free in your headspace. And, if you have any authority other than mental authority, you'll begin to adopt those things and not listen to your actual authority. Now, when I talk about authority, I mean your decision making, right? For me, I'm a sacral authority. So, and I, point towards my belly because that, right, your sacral, that's where you're going to start to feel some of those things is in your guts, right? So like for me, if I'm excited, I'm leaning in. I'm, I want to know more. If I'm not excited, I'm probably leaning back. I'm kind of like, right? So understanding and listening to that is super important for this. And especially if you have a more open chart, because those open or undefined spaces are going to be where energy can ebb and flow. It can come in and out. And, sometimes it can be a big struggle to kind of like figure out what is mine and what is not mine. And again, this is stuff that I help my clients do. This is stuff that I help them understand how to take apart that nestled, right, garble of gunk and unwind the strings so that you can have that like flow of energy. So if you have an open throat center. So I do not have an open throat center. I have a defined throat center. So for me, I find it very easy to speak but I also will take the time to stop and listen. Now, my daughter, who is 7, right? And I don't take this as gospel, but I do notice this. She is a constant stream of thought. She has a defined head and ajna, and she does not stop talking. She's an open throat. I've noticed that with other open throats, where they're just talking for the sake of talking. Whereas someone with a defined throat center is more apt to say something and wait for a response, right? It could also be, there's a number of other things that go into it. My daughter is a projector, so there's a number of different things. But for the most part, if you have an open throat center, it's very easy to use other people's words if you struggle to find consistency in your own. This is where, and this again, you can get in the weeds here. Because for me, I don't necessarily have to use other people's words, but I can utilize those ideas to give them new life and speak them in my own words. So if you're defined, you're going to read somebody else's words and you're going to say, oh, I really love that. Here's my thoughts on it. Here's what I have to say about it. If you have an open throat center, you can still do that, but you can actually utilize some of those people's words. And I'm not saying plagiarize. I'm not saying copy, but you can help that. You can use those words to help create consistency in your own words, right? Again, this definitely gets in the weeds of you have to understand some of the nuances and different things in your own chart, which is why if you have not downloaded the Magnetic Client Blueprint, it's a free guide. The link is down below. If you have not downloaded that, you definitely need to, because that's going to walk you through how to understand how to do all of this stuff. Also, working with me is going to help you accelerate and do these things faster, more efficiently. So if you have an open G center, which if you're looking at your human design chart, your G center is right below your throat center. It's a diamond shape. If you have an open G center, it can often feel challenging to understand who you actually are. Because the G center it's like the center of you. It's like right in the middle of your chest. So, it's like what everything kind of comes into is through your G center. So my G center is defined. I have a number of the gates defined in my G center. So I feel very secure in myself. I'm also very good at helping people figure out who they are, what they feel like how that works for them. Now, if you have an open spleen, it's very easy to operate out of fear. I do have an open spleen. And the fear, right, that, and I say fear as in the fight or flight fear of oh my God, what if people don't like this? What if, right? That what if comes from an open spleen. And sometimes if you're defined in your spleen, you can still feel that fear, but it might be a little bit easier to kind of push past that. Or you might be deadlocked in it, right? And I don't say this to scare you. I say it to bring awareness to, because you can shift it. You can shift it very easily. And it's very easy to kind of get back into those old habits. But once you know what those things are, you can very easily go, we're not doing that. That's not how we're functioning anymore. We're on this track now. And then it starts to become habit to not get into that, right? So what does this all have to do with lead generation? Okay, so if you're having trouble speaking about your stuff, right? And I talked about, in the last episode, I talked about taking a pause. Now, you don't have to take a 3-month pause. You could take a weekend pause. You could take a 1-day pause. You could take a 1-year pause. It doesn't matter how long the pause is. What's important is you pause. And to go back to the beginning of the episode, some of the common methods for lead generation, social media, lead magnets, website, webinar, all of that, email, you need a strategy. So if we think about this from, what portions of your human design are open, what portions are defined, how can you work with those defined centers to help you create a strategy that is going to help you show up in the best way possible, but also start to layer your marketing. And when I talk about layering your marketing, I mean exactly what I'm doing with this podcast. By using this podcast as a long form, right? Long form content where I can post in a number of different places. I can post the video on YouTube. I can post the audio on YouTube. I can also clip this and I can post it onto whatever social platforms I want. I can create a few different static posts from this. I can use the transcript. I can send it out to email. I can start to see, right? I can start to use this as market research. What are people responding to? What are they not responding to? Did I think that post would hit, but really this post hit, right? Like, what are the things that I can see from what I've created, from what I love to do? Because the energy that I'm putting into this is going to emanate out, and it's going to attract exactly the people who need to hear what I'm talking about. And that's what I want you to understand is whether you have an open throat or a defined throat, you can do these things, right? You can do these things in a way that feels really good, whether you're a manifesting generator, a manifester, a projector, a reflector, a generator, it doesn't matter. You can still get these things to work for you. And that's why so many people will say, be everywhere, all over the place, because it's worked for them. DM 100 people, just like Alex Hormozy. To me, that sounds really exhausting. And I love the DMs. Now, if we shift that frame of mind to say, can I have 3 to 5 conversations with people I'm connected to or have just connected to today? That sounds like a blast, right? Can I connect with someone to be like, hey, thanks for the follow on Instagram. I would love to know what has resonated for you on my profile. I can't wait to connect more. That is so much more genuine than sending 100 cold emails or DMs per day. Now, because I've worked in a brick and mortar situation, right? Because I owned a yoga studio, because I have a photography business, I understand why sending that amount of, DMs per day can work. I've seen it work. I've done it in my yoga studio, right? So was it exhausting? Yes. I did not prefer it. But again, that is me. For you, it might sound really exciting. I don't know. But again, it goes back to, what is your strategy? What do you want to do? What feels good to you? How do you want to show up? Where do you want to show up? And I talked about that so much in the last episode, right? I took a step back. I took a pause because I needed to clear the energy. I needed to understand how I wanted to show up. I wanted to see, what was I missing? Like, what did I want to do for this business so that I can make the income that I want to make, so that I can help the people I want to help? And I know a lot of people in the spiritual, the woo community, you're all scared to talk about money. And I've never understood why. Even when I owned the yoga studio, people are terrified to talk about money. Yoga teachers, I'm calling you out. You're terrified to make a dang dollar. And I did not understand why. Your words, your classes, even as a coach, people are afraid to make money. You are worthy of making money. And I want you to understand that. And a lot of times that scarcity comes from not having a strategy. So when we think about this, right, it goes back to understanding, what kind of strategy do you want? How many hours a day do you want to be working? How many clients do you want to be serving, right? What kind of things are you going to have to do to fill the programs that you have? If you're doing one-on-one mentorship, like what I do, or one-on-one coaching, like what I do, it doesn't take as many people to fill the seats as a course does, right? But it might take a couple of calls, a couple of sales calls to close a high ticket sale. It doesn't have to, but in the beginning, it might. And these are things that I help people understand. I help walk them through this stuff so that they understand, here's the business here's the business side of my business. Because when we own a business, there's always two sides of it. There's the client-facing side, and then there's the business side. And we talk all about the client-facing side, serving the clients, which is great and necessary, but it doesn't leave a lot of time to talk about business. And that was something that when I owned the yoga studio, I hated, because we weren't really allowed to talk about business in yoga teacher training. Now, I did, and I talked about business a lot because it was really important for me, for my students, to learn how to make $1, well, more than $1, but to learn how to bring people into class, to learn how to sell people into class passes, how to sell people into teacher training programs, how to bring people in, make them feel welcome, and not make it feel like, ooh, you should definitely buy this 20 class pass over a single class, right? And that's always been something that I've been really good at, is helping people understand, here are the things that I have to offer. What are your questions, and how can I help you make your best decision? So if you're feeling like, yes, I'm resonating with this, yes, I need to understand a strategy for my lead generation, you're going to want to book a call with me, and we're going to go through where you're at in your call. So you can book, it's a free call, 30 minutes. We're going to go over your lead generation. We're going to see what is aligned, what is not aligned, right? What are you doing? How much are you doing? How much do you need to do, right? How many people are you connected with? Who can you go out and do some market research with? We're going to go through all that stuff so that your lead gen can start working for you. Because if you're not generating leads, or if the leads you're generating are not your ideal leads, you need to shift something. It's probably something in your strategy. And maybe you don't have a strategy. And it's okay to say, oh shit, I don't have a strategy. I actually don't have a super great way for a client. And some people will call this a client journey, right? How does a cold client, a cold connection, someone you've just met, how do they get from cold to sold, right? And obviously it's not going to happen overnight. Very few times nowadays will people just meet you and go, yeah, here is my credit card, charge it, right? You have to do some work. You have to put in some work. And this is what I've learned over the past 20 years of business. Also learned this in corporate, that you have to build yourself up to build the authority. So that's what I help you learn. That's what I'm going to help you do. So all in all, to wrap this episode up, right? When you're thinking about your lead gen, when you're thinking about your sales, if you haven't made a sale in a while, that's when you're going to want to talk to me, right? Because you're doing all the things. You're showing up on social media, you're posting the stories, you're posting the carousels, you're posting the reels, you're doing the TikToks, you're dancing, you're, doing 61 seconds on your TikTok, and, there's still nothing and nobody's doing the thing, right? You've got this lead magnet, but nobody's opting into it. You've put the workshop out on Facebook and nobody is going to it. You've sent the emails, but nobody is opening them. These are the things that I help people understand how to work in their business. And this is part of the, employee side of your business, the work that goes into the business. You're putting work in so that you can work on your business. You can be the CEO. So you can do all the fun things that all the 6, 7, 8-figure business owners that you're watching talk about. They were here once too. I promise you they have been where you are right now. So when you think about leads are going to come when your energy is clear. Leads are going to come when your content initiates a response. Remember, 70% of the world, right? Most people, 3 out of 4 people are either a manifesting generator or a generator. Most people crave something they can respond to. So when you understand your human design and what other people probably are, initiating a response in your content is going to get more eyes on you. It's going to start to get people to notice you, right? So if you haven't already, make sure you click below, grab the magnetic client blueprint, and make sure you book a clarity call with me, because I want to go over this stuff with you. Because when I get to go over this with you, you get to understand, oh, here are the things that I can tweak. Here are the things that I can shift, that I can change, that I can add, or that I can get rid of, right? Because maybe you're doing too much. That's going to help me get in alignment. And remember, I have spots open in my one-on-one membership or mentorship. There are 3 and 6 month options. The best way to talk about that is to book that clarity call, right? We're going to go over all your stuff, and then we're going to spend the last 5 to 10 minutes talking about how I can help you. What are your next steps? What are the best next steps for you so that you can go and do all the things that you want to do? And that's it. That's all for today. So if you resonated with something that I've said, make sure you go ahead and send me a message on Instagram. I want to hear from you. I want to know what has resonated. I want to know what golden nuggets you took away today. I want to know what you're going to shift into. And then make sure you grab the magnetic client blueprint below. Make sure you book a clarity call so that we can go over your current lead generation strategy, so that you could start connecting with people who are warm and hot leads, who want your freebies, who want to be in your masterclasses, who want your low, medium, and high ticket offerings. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to talk to you again soon. Have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next episode.